Hi, this is FUAD ABASOV, a broker with Right at Home Realty, and this is your monthly real estate statistics.
Here is a comprehensive overview of the current real estate market in Toronto, highlighting key factors driving recent changes. After the sluggish spring and early fall real estate market, it appears that the central bank's rate cuts are beginning to have an impact. Toronto's home sales climbed 14% in October, the steepest monthly increase in nearly a year, indicating an increasing number of buyers moved off the sidelines and back into the marketplace in response to the Bank of Canada's 4 consecutive interest rate cuts. For most of this year, sales have been subdued. Even after the Bank of Canada cut its benchmark interest rate in June, July, and September, prospective home buyers barely budged. However, after the federal government announced easier mortgage rules and the central bank made a bigger interest rate cut in October, more buyers made a purchase. While market conditions did tighten in October, there is still a lot of inventory and choice for home buyers. Sellers have been noticeably more active, with listings up 4.3% in October, following September's 4.9%, the biggest monthly gain since July of 2023. With new listings outpacing sales, inventory levels have been building up, helping to rebalance the supply and demand dynamic that became heavily skewed during the pandemic. The sales to new listings ratio is now around 43%, indicating a balanced market. Anything below 40% is a buyer's market, and anything above 60% is usually a seller's market. Mortgage rates have also been dropping, with the popular 5-year fixed mortgage just above 4%. That is lower than a year earlier when that product had an interest rate closer to 6%. At the same time, more homeowners have been putting their homes up for sale, which has given would-be buyers more properties to choose from and has helped keep home prices steady. As for the condo market, there is a record number of condo listings, which is up 38% year over year. There is 46.6% surge in condos listed for rent in the third quarter, according to the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board stats. There is also an aggressive price discounting from developers who held back units and supply from the small percentage of panicked sellers who can no longer qualify for a mortgage on the condo they overpaid on a few years ago, often because it won't appraise for the purchase price. Nevertheless, there will be better days ahead. For one thing, as per our government position, immigration will ramp up again in 2027. For another, there will be a massive shortage of condo supply coming in 2028 due to frozen projects and underbuilding today.
And now, let's take a closer look at detached home sales in Toronto and surrounding areas.
In Toronto, average selling price of detached home in October was $1.79 million, 4.3% increase compared to last October. There were 813 properties sold in October, a 35% increase compared to last year. The amount of new listings increased by 10%. On average, it takes 22 days for a detached home to be sold in Toronto today. Average selling price of detached home in Vaughan in October was $1.8 million, almost 5% increase compared to October of last year. There were 145 properties sold, 51% increase compared to October of last year. The amount of new listings rose by 3.5%. On average, it takes 26 days for a detached home to be sold in Vaughan today. An average selling price of detached home in Richmond Hill was $1.96 million, 5% increase compared to October of last year. There were 111 detached properties sold in October. The amount of new listings went down by 2.3%. On average, it takes 28 days for a detached home to be sold in Richmond Hill today. In Mississauga, average selling price of detached home in October was $1.49 million. Compared to last October, price went down by 3.5%. The amount of sold properties went up by 27%. The amount of new listings went down by 7.7%. On average, it takes 24 days for a detached home to be sold in Mississauga today. Markham, an average selling price of detached home in October was $1.65 million, 5% decrease compared to October of last year. The amount of sold properties went up by almost 18%. The amount of new listings also rose to 10.5%. On average, it takes almost 3 weeks for a detached home to be sold in Markham today. Newmarket. Average selling price of detached home in October was $1.21 million, almost 6% decrease compared to October of last year. The amount of sold properties went by 15%, the amount of new listings went down by 10%. On average, it takes 23 days for a detached home to be sold in Newmarket today. In Aurora, an average selling price of detached home in October was $1.78 million, 3.6% increase compared to October of last year. The amount of sold properties went up by 20%, the amount of new listings went down by 8%. It takes on average 1 month for a detached home to be sold in Aurora today. In Innisfil, average selling price of detached home in October was $872,000, almost 19% decrease compared to October of last year. The amount of sold properties, however, went up by almost 90%. The amount of new listings went down by 7%. On average, it takes 37 days for a detached home to be sold in Innisfil today. Average selling price of detached home in King City compared to last October went up by 14.8% and is sitting at $3.14 million. The amount of sold properties went up almost by 300%. Amount of new listings went up by 17%. On average, it takes 33 days for a detached home to be sold in King City today. In Bradford, average selling price of detached home in October was $1,120,000, 6% decrease compared to October of last year. The amount of sold properties went up by 65%. The amount of new listings went down by almost 30%. On average, it takes 27 days for a detached home to be sold in Bradford today. In Milton, average selling price of a detached home in October did not change compared to last year and was sitting at $1.29 million. The amount of sold properties went up by 105% compared to last October. The amount of new listings also rose by 44%. On average, it takes 24 days for a detached home to be sold in Milton today. In Stoufville, an average selling price of a detached home went down by 5.4% compared to last October and is sitting at $1.42 million. The amount of sold properties also went down by 26%. The amount of new listings went down by 3.5%. On average, it takes almost 40 days for a detached home to be sold in Stoufville today. In Barrie, average selling price of a detached home in October was $836,000. 1.4% increase compared to last October. The amount of sold properties went up by 41%. The amount of new listings, however, went down by 2%. On average, it takes almost 1 month for a detached home to be sold in Barrie today. In Oakville, average selling price of a detached home in October was $1.99 million, 11% increase compared to October of last year. Amount of sold properties also went up by 63% compared to last October. The amount of new listings went down by 5%. On average, it takes 27 days for a detached home to be sold in Oakville today. As RBC economists point out, interest rate adjustments will remain a focal point for market participants into 2025. While December's anticipated second consecutive 50 basis points reduction from the Bank of Canada rate cut may further stimulate buyers' interest, affordability challenges will likely temper any potential surge in demand. Word on the street is more and more sellers could be waiting to put their property on the market until activity heats up again in the spring.
If you'd like to receive your own personalized sales report about home sales in your neighborhood, please call me at 647-801-3401 or email me at sold@fuadhomes.com. Thanks for watching and see you next month.